you all for coming out, and Katie, thank you for the introduction. It is, let me thank all of the people who helped organize the event, and the food looks great. And tell you, I am honored to be back at the Labor Hall. I don't know if all of you noticed, but if my memory is right, Eugene V. Debs, among others, actually spoke in this room. In his time, had a very strong labor movement, and this was part of that. Obviously, I am here today for everything I can, and I know that you will as well, make sure that we elect Peter and Becca to the Senate and to the House. While the polling is very good for both Peter and Becca, and I'm confident they're going to win, we do not want to be overly confident, because in midterm elections, the voter turnout is not necessarily high, so we have got to do everything we can in the next 2.5 weeks to make sure that our friends, family, co-workers come out and vote for these excellent candidates. Yeah. I wanted to take this opportunity today to tell you why it's so important that we elect Peter and Becca, and why this national election is so important. Often in midterm elections, people sometimes don't pay quite as much attention. This is not a presidential race, and the media is not quite as focused on the races as in presidential years. But I will tell you without any hesitation that this midterm election is the most important midterm election in my lifetime, and in your lifetime as well. Now, why is that? Because these are not normal times. Right? Normal times, we have debates about issues. Those of us who are progressives disagree with conservatives about how you go forward on healthcare and education and labor issues, environment, and we have that debate. This campaign is not about that. The most important issue in this campaign, and it really always stuns me that I have to talk about that in the year 2022. The issue is whether or not we remain a democracy. That is the most important issue. Because Becca and Peter are running against people all across this country who are working overtime to undermine American democracy, to have people lose faith in the election process. And what they are saying is elections are great, but if we lose the election, obviously it was fraud. When we win the election, it was great. Well, that's not how you have a democracy. I and other candidates who are here have won elections, we've lost elections. But you don't go around when you lose the election and say, oh, it was fraud, or the only way I can lose this election is if there is fraud. That is undermining the very foundations of American democracy. And I know that in Barre and Central Vermont, we have thousands and thousands of men and women who put their lives on the line to defend democracy. And in the democracy, there are rules about winning and losing in an election process. And it is outrageous to me, something I never thought that I would live to see in this country, that we have people from the top of the Republican Party on down who are working to undermine American democracy. So that's number one, why this election is so enormously important. Second of all, an issue that all of you are familiar with. Many of us had thought that 50 years ago, women had finally won the right to control their own bodies. And it was unbelievable to many of us, although not surprising given the nature of the Supreme Court, that in the year 2022, you had a Supreme Court telling every woman in America that they were not smart enough to be able to make the most personal decisions regarding their own life. They needed a state government to make those decisions for them. And in Becca and Peter, you have two strong candidates who understand that it is women, not the government, who will make those decisions. have the issue of climate. All of you have seen reports about what's gone on just this last summer in terms of climate change, the impact of climate change. In the western part of the United States, there's going to be really, really serious problems with drought and water supply. In the UK, they had the highest temperature ever recorded. In China, bridges and rail things were actually melting. Had to suspend traffic because the steel was actually melting. And we're seeing in Latin America and in other countries, people who work the land are unable to continue to farm because of drought and are moving away, causing major migration problems and immigration problems all across the world. And what you saw this summer is not the end. If we do not get our act together, not just in the United States, but all over the world, the situation will only become worse. And what this campaign is about are people like Peter and Becca who understand not only that climate change is real, of course it is, but that we have got to move in an extremely bold way in transforming our energy system away from fossil-fueled energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And when we do that, by the way, we can create millions and millions of good-paying jobs. So climate is on the ballot. And what's also on the ballot is how we deal with the economy. Let me say a word about the economy, because this is an issue I've been very much involved in. I don't know, the media doesn't talk about it because you have a corporately controlled media. Congress doesn't talk about it much because a lot of those guys get their money from wealthy individuals. But you got an economy right now that is working extremely well for the people on top. In fact, it is fair to say that for the 1%, things are better today than maybe at any time in the history of this country. During this terrible pandemic that all of us have gone through and are still going through, tens of thousands of workers, more than tens of thousands, died going to work. We lost 5,000 nurses alone during this pandemic. People had no choice. They had to go to work to earn a living for the family. The billionaire class saw a $2 trillion increase in their wealth during that period. Working people died, billionaires became much richer. Right now, you are looking at a moment of more income and wealth inequality than at any time in the history of the United States of America. You got 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of America. And what Peter understands and what Becca understands, that is not the economy that we want. We want an economy that works for all, not just the billionaire class. Just the other day, I don't know if some of you saw it, we had the ambassador from Finland coming to Vermont. We did a lovely meeting in Wartown at Harvard Union with him. Kids were great. We did one in Burlington as well. And the reason I brought the ambassador here is I wanted Vermonters to get a sense of what is actually going on in the world, not utopian. You have a baby in Finland, you know what you have? You get 3 months off, 100% paid, 7 more months at 70% paid. You have a baby in Vermont, it costs you $15,000 a year on average for child care. In Finland, it's $3,600. In Vermont and in America, you end up in the hospital, God knows, when you will finish paying off that outrageous bill. Because the function of our healthcare system is not to provide quality care to all, but to make huge profits for the insurance company. You end up in the hospital in Finland, you come out maybe with a few $100 bill. In Finland, you know what the cost of higher education is? You want to go to medical school, you want to go to college, anyone know what the bill is? Zero. They think it makes sense that all kids, regardless of income, have a quality education. Their system is very good. In our country, we got 45 million people paying off student debt, and we have hundreds of thousands of bright young kids every year hesitating and not going to college because they don't want to deal with that debt. So Becca and Peter and I understand that education is a human right available to all regardless of income. So those are some of the issues that are out there. It's whether or not women control their bodies, whether or not we remain a democracy, whether or not we lead the world in working to transform our energy system, whether or not we guarantee health care to all people as a human right, not a privilege, whether or not we have the courage to take on the greed of the drug companies who are ripping us off every single day, charging us the highest prices in the world, whether or not we raise the minimum wage to a living wage, whether or not we end the absurdity of being the only major country on earth not to have paid family and medical leave, etc. Those are the issues that are on the ballot. And I am absolutely confident that as my fellow senator in the U.S. Senate, Peter will be there with me fighting for those issues, and that Becca will be working with a very strong group of progressives that are now in the House. So let me conclude by saying this. This campaign is enormously important, and who we elect is enormously important, but it's not the end all. The struggle will continue the day after the election. And anyone who thinks that politics is not relevant to their lives does not know what's going on. Now, my hope is that after Election Day, as Katie said, we will have the most progressive state delegation in the United States Congress. But my hope beyond that is that this small state, our small state of 630,000, can be a beacon of hope and a model to this country about what democracy and decency and justice is about. And that's on all of our shoulders. So let's go forward together. Let's go forward together. Let's win this election, and let's have our small state be in a leadership position in transforming American society so that we are in a nation and government that works for all, for the working class of this country, for the middle class of this country, and not just for billionaire campaign contributors. Thank you all very much. Now it is my pleasure to introduce to you the next United States Senator from the state of Vermont, Peter Welch.
Thank you, Bernie Sanders. Let's hear it for Bernie. Bernie, I've been traveling around with you for a lot of years, and an observation, whenever you're with a group of Vermonters, you always have a little bounce in your step and you're happy, but I gotta tell you something, when you're with a group of Vermonters in the Barre Labor Hall, that smile is from here to Burlington. I think you built this place. Oh my God, it was great to hear you, and thank you so much for the incredible support that you're giving to Becca and to me. We really appreciate it, and we're so looking forward to being part of the team with you in the United States Congress. I want to thank everybody for coming out today. This is an incredibly important election for all these reasons that Bernie mentioned, but I'm going to pick up where Bernie started too, because democracy is at stake. All of the issues that are so important to working people, middle-class people, we're not going to get anywhere if we can't preserve and protect our democracy. And I was in the building. I was in the House on January 6th. I was there when the shot was fired. I was there when the mob was breaking down the doors. I was there when I had a young officer standing over me. This is a man who had to commute into work 90 minutes each way because he couldn't afford to live in Washington, but his job was to protect members of Congress. I was there, but I couldn't believe it was happening. I couldn't believe it was happening, even as I was hearing the doors being broken down. And I couldn't, because we in this country have enjoyed something that we have come to have as an expectation, and that is the peaceful transfer of power. And as Bernie mentioned, you win or lose an election, you accept the outcome and the decision of the voters. And I've lost 2 elections, one by 260 votes. But I trusted our town clerks. No recount necessary. It was the decision of the people who voted. That's no longer sacrosanct. And you know, a lot of us thought that after January 6th and the horror of that violence, that everybody who had anything to do with it, or who might be seen as having something to do with it, would renounce what happened, repudiate. But what's happened? Right now, as Becca, Bernie, and I are with you, there are 300 Trump-aligned candidates running for the United States House of Representatives, running for the United States Senate, running for governor, running for Secretary of State, that have as their agenda a Stop the Steal Trump platform. So be sure to understand that this threat to democracy is real. And mission 1 is to have a delegation from Vermont that understands we will never relent on the right of the people to decide who their leaders are. And we need that democracy because all those things that Bernie was talking about, child care, focusing on climate change, having a fair tax system, having a guarantee that your vote can be cast and your vote will be counted. All of those depend on having a democracy where all of us have a seat at the table. And the battle is about resolving those incredibly challenging issues that every society faces through a democratic process where everybody has a right to be heard. That's under assault too because of what's happened in the Supreme Court. The most radical and extreme Supreme Court since before the Civil War. It's the first time has any Supreme Court taken away a constitutional right that had been protected for over 50 years. And choice isn't the only thing that they've got their eyes on, as Justice Thomas made clear. Interracial marriage, contraception, these things that weren't in the original Constitution, because the Supreme Court now has adopted a doctrine, a crackpot doctrine of originalism. If it wasn't around when the Constitution was written, somehow we can't deal with what is around today and what we need to address. That's very much on the ballot. One of the things we're facing is another Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, that basically said unlimited money, secret money, is legal. That's speech. It's a catastrophe for the democratic process. And just to tell you how serious it is, there's a lot of folks that are worried that if the Democrats maintain their majority in the Senate, a man named Bernie Sanders is going to be the chair of the Health, Education, and Labor and Pension Committee. We know there's hundreds of millions, not billions of dollars in, but we're coming down to crunch time. One of the wealthiest people in America, who has a big financial services company in New York, got a little nervous. So what did he do? He does what we do at the labor hall when we've got to cover the expenses for the meal. He passed the hat. He passed the hat to a couple of his hedge fund folks, and they have $100 million that is going to be spent and invested to make sure that we don't have a health committee with a senator who's going to put Medicare for all on the table, who's going to put affordable child care on the table, who's going to put a minimum wage that's a livable wage on the table. This election is, does Mitch McConnell get the gavel? Nationwide abortion ban on the table, Medicare for all off the table, child care off the table. This election is about whether we're going to sustain the gains that we made in a 50-50 Senate. This is a reason for us to be hopeful and urgent. With a 50-50 Senate, and with only 5 votes margin in the House, we were able, for the first time, to pass major climate legislation, $387 billion, that finally acknowledges that we have to have the federal government involved in setting policies to help us save our economy, to build our economy, and to reduce carbon emissions and save the planet. We were able, until it slipped away, to get child care that was affordable and the child care tax credit that took so many kids and families out of poverty. What's wrong with that? I want more of that, not less of that. We were able to pass legislation where veterans in Vermont who served in Iraq and Afghanistan and were exposed to toxic substances because they were sleeping next to burn pits finally get access to health care through the Veterans Administration. We did that. And think of all the more we can do if we keep that Senate majority and have this man, Bernie Sanders, the chair of the most important committee about working family issues that we have in the United States Senate. And we have Becca Balint. You know, with all her passion, with all her wonderful presentations, there's another thing I want to let you in on. In the quiet of the back rooms, this woman knows what she's doing. She gets it done. She gets that job done. So she may look nice, but don't be fooled. She knows how to be mean when necessary. And I want to introduce the next member of Congress from the state of Vermont, our first woman to represent us there, who will be a champion for everything that we care about. Thank you, Becca Balint.
Thank you so much. I want to start by just saying it's just an incredible honor to be on this stage. I'll put this down here. To be on this stage with Bernie and with Peter, 2 people who have dedicated their lives to regular people, to teachers, to firefighters, to nurses, to parents and kids and communities across the state. That's what's going to get us through this hard time. That's what's going to get us through. And I know that they need no introduction, but I imagine there are some of you here that don't know a whole lot about me, so I'm just going to tell you just a little bit. If you want to understand who I am at my core, you got to know I'm a middle school teacher. And the secret is there's actually one of my former students even in the crowd today, which is pretty awesome. When you teach middle school, You have to understand what it is to survive a hellscape. So I'm ready for Congress. But you also have to believe in possibility and promise and potential. And you have to believe that things will get better. Okay? And I do. I do. That is a value that I hold dear, that things will get better because we are resilient and we are creative. And Vermonters are rooted in values and in taking care of each other in your communities and pulling together to do the work of the people. It's one of the reasons why I am so honored to be on the cusp of representing all of you in Congress. I never thought I'd be here. I am a kid of an immigrant dad and a working class mom, and this journey that I'm on fills me with so much pride. And what I hear from parents all over the state, when they come and they bring their kids to meet me, they say, you are showing a way forward for people who never thought they could do this. And that means everything to me. It's about pulling people up behind you. It's about creating space for other voices. And I just want to say right now, it's incredibly difficult to run for office. And I would like everyone who's on the ballot to come up on stage with me right now. Everyone who's on the ballot, come on up. Justice Kennedy, House Member, Senator, Select Board, School Board, everybody coming up here. And if you can't come up to the stage, stand where you are so people can see you. Come on up. Look at these brave people. Look at these courageous people. They are not people who are bought and sold. They are not career politicians. They are people who love their communities. That's why they do the work that they do. So look at these people and promise them that you're going to sign up to make calls, you're going to sign up to knock doors, you're going to give them $5 or $10, because it's not just about those of us at the top of the ballot, it's about all the down ballot races. So please, show them you support them. We have our work cut out for us, but together we're going to have a victorious November. Thank you so much for being out here today.
Can we get Peter Welch up here? Can we get Sanders and Becca? Let's get a round for the best delegation in the country.